Live from Miami, Florida, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Patriots Perspective with Christi Tasker. Your news behind the government's facade. Don't fall victim to propaganda or spend another 30 days in the tech gulag. Turn off your tell lie vision and just listen. Hear the most mind-opening hours of your life as we interview whistleblowers and real patriots for uncensored truth. The Commie News Network and Fake Book cannot control the power of Jesus Christ. Therefore, they have no power over us. There aren't enough Vegas strippers to fake check what's coming. Put in your earphones and avoid the tech tyrants. Subscribe to patriotsperspective.com now and see the evidence and action items to help you take back your God-given rights, government, and expose Satan and his demons taking up residence in your community. Be sure to hit the like or rumble button and comment to tell us where you're holding the line.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Patriots Perspective. My name is Christi Tasker, and I am your propaganda destructor. So sorry, obviously I've been talking way too much today, but I wanted to make sure I have breaking news with a special guest and my mom's friend from high school, Pete Crittenden. Pete, welcome back to Patriots Perspective. It's been so long since you've been on.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on and choosing us to help break this news that you've kind of put together and disseminated so that the public can understand where we are, what's going on in the world, and not let the bad players win.
Well, thanks very much. As many people seem to be aware right now, I started an endeavor about this time last year. And my media and information company, Info Blurbs, grew out of a real-world tasking. I was helping a group of people like myself, ex-Green Berets, who go overseas as freelancers and help recover Americans and bring them back to the United States. And I was sending them information. I could not participate because of personal reasons. So I was supporting them with information, intelligence related information on the situation on the ground where they're at, which was north of Israel and south of Syria, if that narrows it down. And it became overwhelming to the point I was handling so much message traffic. I decided to go to one point for all, knowledge and wisdom. And that morphed into what we have now on X as Info Blurbs. And I'd like to, expand my social media footprint. It's just I'm one man deep. I've got some tremendous sources of information. Open source intelligence is a discipline of intelligence. We're in the information era. And, it's possible. In the old days, you'd have to have some sneaky spy going around taking pictures with a Minox camera or something. Nowadays, it's all the information is out there to a large extent. So my sources include military, diplomatic, political, journalists, and just ordinary people in the street. Mostly in the Middle East, North Africa, Europe, Western Europe, Ukraine, of course, and Southeast Asia, but also I'm getting some information out of Central and South America from time to time. And, of course, Australia, which is where I started, actually, a long time ago. When I started, my objective was to cover just security information, the international security scene, because it seemed to me that the airwaves are saturated with political stuff. And of course, we're in the middle of the election. Since then, I've decided I'm going to cover some political or domestic stories that are related to this remarkable cultural revolution / counter revolution that we're in the middle of. And so that's about where it's at right now. And that's what I've been up to.
Well, Pete, before we go into it, I want my audience to understand and be reminded that you've lived on 6 continents. And let's talk a little bit about what you do as a Green Beret, because you kind of, I find that a lot of our veterans and special intelligence like yourself, they will bypass over some of the things that you guys have done or do, which I know that you have to with some of those things, but you're easily able to put pieces together that are out here in the mainstream media, or intelligence things that we may be missing, like that other government whistleblowers have put forth, or that you're able to see things a lot clearer sometimes than we are as the public and mainstream, and be concerned about it way sooner. I know my grandfather was, always concerned about communism and Cuba and what was taken over Cuba, but he could never say those things, especially considering, like you were just saying, that we now have social media, we have different platforms in which news can travel. In his era, he didn't really have that. So he would have been, obviously giving out the information, which he was not allowed to do, considering he served our State Department with presidential access to JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I know that your father also served, because your father and my grandfather were both stationed in Thailand together. So can you talk a little bit about that, about what that was like growing up in Thailand first? Because I think that's where we're about to get into the information that you've informed me that you want to share. We're basically going to go to Asia a minute, so that people can understand like where you've gotten some of this information and where you've served. So I don't know how much you can say. I mean, I know you can talk about when you were in Thailand. You and my mom were in Thailand because you were not under any kind of military operation. Your parents may have been, but so can you just tell what you can tell?
Well, my father was a mechanical engineer, and he built power plants in Southeast Asia. And my first memories are in Sumatra. And left there when I was about 6 years old. We had to get evac'd out of the war that they had. Went back to Australia. My family's Australian. I'm Australian. Uh, don't have the accent. I'm an Americanized Australian. Anyhow, so we went back to Aussie. Then we made our way back to the States once my dad got out of Indonesia. And the next overseas assignment was Bangladesh. In those days, it was Pakistan. And he built a power plant there. And then we ended up in Thailand. And I spent my entire teenage years, 1970 to 1979, in Bangkok, Thailand. And so, as you can imagine, I'm totally jaded, ruined for life. Uh, I was the first 5 years the war was on, and the U.S. military had an enormous presence, a huge presence in Thailand. Everywhere you looked, you saw GIs. They had PXs, they had a hospital, they had bowling alleys. I mean, they were occupying hotels all over town as barracks, as offices. It was crazy. Huge logistical footprint, air bases. In any case, on the last day of the war, I was on a beach in southern Thailand in a place called Sadahi, which actually is a harbor which has a naval base, which at that time was U.S. anti naval base. And I was watching helicopters come out of the east, and I wasn't quite sure what it was, and it became evident this was the evacuation of Phnom Penh. And after that, I wanted to study everything I could about communism. We were getting all the stories directly out of the refugee camps about the madness that was going on in Cambodia, the killing fields. And there were Viet boat people that were actually coming in our direction. They didn't all go out to the east. Some of them floated around into the Gulf of Siam. And we were getting the stories from them about, the killings, the bloodbath that was going on in Vietnam. I wanted to understand. So I read Che Guevara's book, Guerrilla Warfare. Then I read Mao's book, and about this time, my father thought I was becoming a communist. Since then, I've been studying Marxist revolutionary theory, Marxist-Leninism, and totalitarian regimes ever since. And as a Green Beret, we study this stuff also because guerrilla warfare is what we're all about, revolutionary warfare. All right. Now, if you'd like, I can reflect on some of the current situations over
Well,
there in Southeast Asia.
before you do that, I want us to comment. I want to play just a little clip from Four Corners. And I have not even watched this clip myself. So we're both maybe going to be slightly surprised in what we're seeing here. But just so the audience can kind of understand, this is a 2011 clip from
Preloaded.
Surviving Cambodia. It's called Surviving Cambodia's Killing Fields in 2011. This is by ABC's Four Corners, ABC News Four Corners, which I find that, they've often at one point in time told us the
20
truth.
handpicked products.
It says the Four Corners documentary was originally broadcast. Hold on just a second. It was originally broadcast. They tell where it was originally broadcast, because we also know that they've told us a lot of, what happened and the truth of the matter of what happened. And it is out there for us to kind of figure out what is going on. So just give me 1 second while it's loading. But I believe in, making sure that people really understand what you're talking about, maybe what your father saw in terms of, okay, so it says the Four Corners documentary was originally aired and broadcast. Where Are They Now on June 27th, 2011, ABC TV. So evidently it's not there anymore. It's very strange. So they've evidently pulled it and renamed it.
There we go.
Last month, in a modest temple in suburban Sydney, Pinny Ung came with her mother, Mrs. Kang, and her husband Bun to celebrate the Buddha's birthday. I first met them and other survivors from the Cambodian genocide in 1987, after they'd settled in Sydney. Today, the latest bitter debate over refugees is again dominating the media. We decided to revisit these survivors to hear from those so rarely given a voice in the refugee debate.
We don't want to die. We must leave. And that's what, when we determined to risk our life to cross the border, when we escaped, that was extraordinary experience in our life. And yes, of course, the scar, it stay there forever. That doesn't matter how happy, how much you enjoy, it's here with you. I'm going to take it to my grave.
A little over 3 decades ago, Pinny was among the haunted men, women and children who fled the nation then known as Kampuchea, a place that became synonymous with the killing fields. They came across the Thai border in their tens of thousands, starving and desperate, refugees from the Cambodian Holocaust. Under Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge regime, some 1,700,000 Cambodians had perished from execution, war and starvation. A fifth of the entire nation in less than 4 years, many buried in mass graves.
Okay, Pete, so I'll stop it there so that you can continue on. I think that kind of gives the audience an opportunity to hear, what actually occurred, so that they can get a better understanding of what really did occur during that time frame, and so that they can understand what that actually was, that it was, recorded in time, it is there, and in comparison to what you're seeing now.
Yes, well, Cambodia is a small country, and it's not a particularly rich country. It's compared to Thailand. Thailand has a huge economy comparatively, and the Cambodians don't have as professional a military as the Cambodians. The Cambodian army, it's undisciplined, it's unorganized. And what we've seen in the past couple of weeks is a border clash that erupted. And this is an actual, I don't know, a cyclic sort of thing. They essentially fight over a section of the border where the lines were drawn during the French colonial period that were problematic. And there, at the center of it is an ancient temple that was originally of the Khmer Empire, that is Cambodian. And that temple is perched on a very high cliff overlooking Cambodia. The cliff goes like this. So where the temple is, if you look on it from above, the borderline goes, it's in Cambodia. But to access it, you have to go through Thailand. And they've been fighting over this ever since. And when I was there, when I was young in the 70s, every couple of years they'd have an exchange of mortar shells, and that would be it. Maybe a little bit of gunfire. Honor would have been served, and then they'd pull back and wait another year or two, and then rinse or repeat. What made this series of clashes significant is the Cambodians were using heavy weaponry, multiple launch rocket systems, and they were taking out targets. They hit a hospital and they hit a gas station deeper within Thailand, and a lot of people were hurt. And of course, there were casualties. And this is extraordinary. This is beyond the normal of this clash, of this situation. And so then it just doesn't make any sense. Why would the Cambodians want to unleash a full-scale, conventional type war? And of course, the Thais, they responded with flights of F-16s going over and bombing headquarter elements, bombing their artillery systems and their associated radar arrays. And like I said, it just doesn't make sense. The Thai military budget is about 100 times bigger than the Cambodian military budget. Why would they do such a thing? So when things don't make sense, you have to look for what is there that does make sense. And it was suggested to me by one of my sources that this is actually Russian and Chinese interference. They practice something known as hybrid warfare. They can't fight us on a conventional battlefield, so they can do everything they can to suck our resources, to distract us, to sow seeds of confusion. And of course, Thailand is a U.S. client. And
when you say a U.S. client, what do you mean?
Well, we train their military. We sell them, weapons and equipment. We sponsor them. We have security agreements. That's what I mean by a client state, an ally.
Okay. Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they are allies, and that we are supposed to be. So, and you had said that you believe that
but there is a
hold on there. You believe that our resources are being cut very short. It sounds like.
Well, if there is Russian and Chinese sponsorship of this extraordinary Cambodian military activity, well, then that would represent they're trying to, take our focus away from Ukraine and away from Taiwan and suck our resources away. And the United States has been giving so much military aid to Ukraine that our stocks are running low. And when I mean low, I mean we're down to normally U.S. military forces would have to have their go-to-war stock and then double that in reserve. And we're significantly lower than that double amount.
Yeah.
And,
so what do you think that what do you think should be happening? What should President Trump be doing about it? What information would you want him to know in the process?
Well, I'm sorry.
I think I'm getting cut. What information would you want what do you think President Trump should be doing? What should he be aware of? And what should Americans be doing in the process, do you think?
President Trump already communicated with the leaders of Thailand and Cambodia and called for a ceasefire. And then those leaders last week met in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and shook hands and said, okay, ceasefire. And right on up to the ceasefire, of course, Cambodia was firing. They were having their mad minute, firing as much as they can, because that's what countries do prior to a ceasefire. The tempo of fires increases, because everybody's trying to get as much territory right at the end as they can. And at this point, so there was some discussion. Well, the ceasefire is disingenuous. Since then, all I've heard is that, the ceasefire is holding. It's very tenuous. And there was some rumors of Russian signals intelligence being received from the Thai side, and which suggests a Russian presence there as advisors. When the Russians send in advisors, they don't just send in one or two teams like we do. They'll send in a battalion or a brigade with a headquarters element that parallels the local forces that are advising. Think of the Wagner Group, that sort of thing.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that the Russians are in communication with the Thais?
No, with the Cambodians. That's sort of how it appears.
Okay. So the Russians are in conversation with the Cambodians. So who do you think is in conversation with the Thais?
Well, we would be, of course. We directly support them. We support them, like I said, with military training, equipment, and we have a pretty, significant diplomatic footprint over there. They're good allies, good friends of the United States, have been since World War II. So, nothing is happening in a vacuum on the Thai side as far as we're concerned.
So what is going to be happening with, or do we have any idea what the Chinese are doing? Are they, in the same box as the Russians, or are they standing with us on the Thai side? And, is this, what is the effect on Cambodia? And, do you feel like this is, a major reason? Are they trying to stretch the U.S. and our resources too thin so that we get distracted from Ukraine? Should we pull out of Ukraine? What is your opinion there?
The Chinese, of course, their motivation is primarily they want to get back to where they were 200 years ago. And this would take a history lesson to explain, but they used to have the highest GDP in the world, and they want to get back to that. And they want to get back to their greatness, and they're well on their way of getting there. And they also want to unify their country. They want to take Taiwan. And they'd like to do that by the 100-year anniversary of their revolution, which would be in 2048. Now, their method of flexing their muscle and stretching out their power is their Belt and Road technique. They're building ports, airports, and establishing commercial ties with all kinds of countries around the world, notably in Africa, but also in Cambodia. And they recently gave 2 warships to Cambodia, so Cambodia actually has a tiny navy now. So their intent would be to distract in any way the United States security focus away from Taiwan. And so that would be a possible, motivator, a driver for the Chinese in this Thai-Cambodian theater.
Well, let's look and see exactly what's going on here. I just found a clip from 12 hours ago showing how many are killed and so on and so forth.
This is last week, I believe.
It's saying 12 hours ago. So I don't know if this is just a repost. This is actually coming, just so everybody knows, it's coming from Money Control with 1.8 million subscribers. So it's saying it doesn't have a date, but it's saying 43 killed and over 300,000 displaced in 5 days.
Yeah, and that's huge for this Thai-Cambodian border clash. It's never been like this. This is significant.
Okay. And then the Thai-Cambodia had 3 days of talks in Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
And then Malaysia returns as the regional mediator.
Yes.
Malaysia is mediating renewed talks between Thailand.
Malaysia is mediating renewed talks
and
between
Cambodia
Thailand
after earlier
and Cambodia.
negotiations broke down last week due to repeated ceasefire breaches. The two sides are meeting again in Kuala Lumpur to try and maintain a tentative truce following days of heavy fighting that left hundreds and thousands displaced near the border. Over 43 people have been killed and more than 300,000 people have been displaced in just 5 days of intense shelling, airstrikes, and gunfire last month. Now, 54 delegates, defense officials from both countries, are in Malaysia for 3 days of talks, with eyes on Thursday meeting that could decide the future of peacekeeping in the region.
We proposed 2 additional matters. The first, which was agreed upon earlier in Kuala Lumpur, is the establishment of an interim defense attaché monitoring force. Only after that will we proceed with the formation of the ASEAN monitoring force. I have conveyed my views on this to both chiefs of defense forces and the relevant authorities. They have agreed, and we have proposed the terms of reference, which have been submitted to both countries, Thailand and Cambodia.
Malaysia's top military commander, General Zafar, says both sides have agreed in principle to the terms of reference for the interim force, seen as a vital confidence-building step.
It is now at the final stage of discussions to be agreed upon before they move on to the next meeting. We are also discussing the proposed ASEAN monitoring team, including the detailed actions we intend to undertake. Additionally, we are refining the forms of assistance we require from major powers that are also present to provide support.
While the ceasefire was brokered with backing from both US and China, the next phase will see the two superpowers attending Thursday's General Border Committee meeting as observers alongside Malaysia. Officials are working through an agenda that includes the proposed monitoring teams and how ASEAN can take the lead in future peace enforcement missions.
The Cambodian and Thai officials have today, tomorrow, and the day after to reach a consensus according to the outlined agenda, which includes understanding the terms of reference, the ASEAN Defense Attaché Monitoring Team, and related matters before the General Border Committee meeting. At the time of the GBC, only then will we, Malaysia, the United States, and China, be invited to participate as observers.
This week's meetings are crucial not just for Thailand and Cambodia, but for ASEAN's credibility in conflict resolution. The region's ability to manage its own crisis without relying solely on foreign powers is being put to test.
Following the GBC, there will be another session involving the foreign ministers of the 3 countries, Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia, as well as the defense ministers of all 3 nations, to hold informal discussions. This is a follow-up to the GBC. This GBC is also referred to as the Extraordinary GBC because it will address many critical issues to ensure that peace and stability continue to be upheld.
Thursday's General Border Committee meeting will be key in determining whether the ceasefire holds and if ASEAN can move forward with a formal monitoring mission. Both sides are expected to present concrete steps. We'll bring you the latest updates as the situation unfolds. Stay tuned to Money Control for more global updates from around the world. See you in the next report.
Well, that was kind of interesting, huh?
Yes, I noticed that the voice to text, it kept talking about ASEAN or ASEAN, and that in the end they got it correct. It's ASEAN. ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is sort of like a it's not like NATO. It's more like a miniature United Nations. They all get together and talk, and they do economic cooperation.
Pete, one of the things that I always look into is to see what, the natural resources are in an area that's being targeted, their imports, their exports. It looks like, and I don't know if you can confirm this, but their major exports are dominated by textiles and apparel, followed by electrical machinery, and then a variety of other goods like footwear, furniture, and travel goods. They do a lot of like knits and crochets and articles of apparels, and then electronic equipment. And then also the other interesting thing to me is always, what natural resources do they have? Because we found that a lot of the disaster areas tend to have be very rich in natural resources, such as key minerals that are included there are, minerals, forest, and potential renewable energy in Cambodia as a whole. But their key mineral resources include iron ore, it looks like manganese, and I'm sure I'm sure I'm butchering that, phosphates and gemstones. So do you know what are they really after here? I guess is my question to you.
I don't think they've got a true objective to try and for one country to beat the other, to take it over, because it's way beyond Cambodia's capability. I think there's an ulterior motive. It just wouldn't make sense. There's no possible way they could really do any kind of significant incursion into Thailand. Those countries are rich in agriculture, particularly rice and other agricultural products. There are some mineral resources such as natural gas platforms out there in the Gulf. The agriculture, rice is the big thing in both of those countries, particularly Thailand. Southeast Asia is the rice bowl of Asia.
Yeah, because it definitely says that the Cambodia is one of our main suppliers for Cambodian goods, and then China is the next second in terms of trade, Vietnam being third, and the European Union being fourth. With Japan being a fifth and Thailand being a sixth. Considering that Thailand's so close, you would think that, Thailand would be a major consumer of their goods. But considering we are a major consumer of their goods, I just wonder sometimes, are they trying to hurt us? Are they trying to cause, trade issues with us so that we'll be short of things? And, always look at things like, okay, if we're getting a lot of our resources or a lot of the Cambodian resources, then if they hurt Cambodia, then guess who can't get their resources? And then we're supposed to be going back to who? China.
What caught my ears when you said that they have a lot of textiles and clothing. That's true. A lot of shoes, a lot of items we have our all the coats and the things are made out of sort of modern textiles these days. Fuzzy jackets and big puffy jackets and all that stuff. And of course, all the duck feathers that they're used in those kind of products comes out of Cambodia. In fact, I even put that into a book that I wrote, into a story I wrote in my first fictional part, based on a guy who actually made a fortune in duck feathers in Cambodia. And when the Khmer Rouge showed up back in the mid-'70s, he had to get on a Vespa and get out of town. And he managed to get one step ahead of the Khmer Rouge. But yeah, they do produce a lot. And the reason why they're probably a higher trading partner with us than Thailand is probably because their labor is so much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Those people actually can work for $1 a day, and that's good pay for them.
Yeah, exactly. And, Americans are really tending to go away from the polyester, and they're really looking at the goods, and they're trying to get away from, one of the things that we know is trending is they're getting away from Chinese made products. And I know that the Chinese are desperate to try to get into some of these small countries that maybe have lower tariffs. And for instance, Cambodia has a long history of silk and cotton being their number one resources, whereas China is mostly polyester and these made up words that nobody's ever heard of before, because they're not really good for our health and our skin and other things. So, when it comes to the natural products, like you were just saying, duck feathers, the actual duck feathers versus the synthetics. So we have natural things versus synthetic, that you often kind of wonder, are they trying to hurt that as well? Is that part of the game of them trying to prevent us from having some of these products and being sustainable? Because, a lot of our fast fashion is made there, and if they're able to resource the cotton and silks in place of polyester, we're all going to be a lot healthier, because we're much better off if we're wearing natural fibers like linen, silks, cottons. I mean, even I love to buy thrift, because and I have certain brands that I like to buy and wear, because I really don't like to wear polyester anymore. It drives me nuts.
Well, it gets to be a bit like a puzzle or a cookie cutter situation. Everybody knows that a lot of our sneakers and other kinds of gear is made in Vietnam, and that they've got a huge population, and they've been doing good deals for us for a long time. And again, the price of labor is really cheap. Well, the Viets and the Chinese hate each other, particularly the Viets hate the Chinese. Not a lot of people are aware that after the Vietnam War, China went down to move in, and they got spanked and sent on their way. They lost a war to Little Vietnam. But Cambodia has been a client state of China for a long time. The Khmer Rouge were Chinese communist inspired. Every kind of communist country's got its own. These ones are Russian and those ones are Chinese. Well, the Viets were Russian clients. The Khmer Rouge were Maoist, and they were Chinese clients. And so, the Chinese influence is very strong in Cambodia, because that's the only place they get their foot in. They do a lot of business with Thailand. That's on a commercial level, but of course, there's no political influence. I mean, beyond corruption, there wouldn't be any political influence, no sponsorship.
Yeah.
Unlike the situation that you would see in Vietnam, Cambodia, with one country being pro-Russian, that would be Viet, and the other being having tendency to lean towards China, that would be Cambodia.
Yeah, because I mean, it looks like that Cambodia was actually paying almost double the amount of tariffs in 2022 when Joe Biden was in power. So, when people are complaining about the tariffs, we've basically imposed a 30% reciprocal tariff on Chinese goods. And see, that's reciprocal. So, they're getting our goods, we're getting their goods. And they basically, China has retaliated with a 10% tariff on U.S. goods. So it's kind of keeps going back and forth. And actually, Cambodia, the U.S. set a 19% reciprocal tariff on Cambodian imports. So, and that's according to J.D. Sapura and the White House. This reflects a reduction from a previously considered higher rate. And China, the U.S. has imposed 30% on reciprocal tariff on Chinese goods, subject to some of the exceptions and temporary reductions. So this is in addition to 7.5% section of 301 tariffs, which is non-booked products. So in other words, products that were not already booked or on the table. So, and then of course, China, like I said, China retaliated with 10%. So I think it's very difficult for people to understand, because, we're lied and told, that, we're making our own prices on products go up. Well, we're actually constitutionally, we are supposed to only be we're only supposed to be taxing on tariffs and not our property taxes and income taxes and so on and so forth. So I believe President Trump may be doing something about that very soon. I mean, we'll all find out, and I'm hopeful that he will, because I think that Americans would like to know the truth about their income taxes, and that they are paying income taxes to a source directly from Puerto Rico, and that they're not going where we think that they are, and the IRS is a different entity and not actually owned by our government. But yet we're made to believe that we have to comply. So I believe these tariffs are going to be a long-term standing in that we will be paying our taxes based on the goods that we're actually purchasing. So I know,
Well,
Pete, you may agree or disagree.
well, I know I can give you a little history lesson.
Okay.
Prior to 1913, the federal government, of course, was a lot smaller in those days, before FDR made it huge in the 30s. But in those days, there was no income tax, and the way the federal government made money was through tariffs. And the tariffs, people realized they were kind of punitive. They were hurting the average person. I'll give you an example. Everybody needs a wool coat. Well, the wool industry, the wool garment industry was owned by the British. They had all the sheep, they had the wool out of Australia, they had all the looms over there. And if you wanted a wool coat, you had to buy one made in Great Britain. And the tariffs caused a wool coat, which would normally cost a person, say, under $100. Now it's over $200. So who's paying the burden of it? But you can't get away from it. You need a wool coat. It gets cold in the wintertime.
Yep.
All right. And all kinds of wool clothing.
Yep.
Okay. So the idea was, why don't we get rid of all the tariffs? And we'll just do an income tax. And so they passed the 14th Amendment in 1913, and they established federal income tax. And the original rate was 1%. Everybody will pay 1%. And then that way we can finance the federal government, and there are no more tariffs. And now that $200, $300 coat only costs you $40 or $50. And and down the line, other products, paper, rope, coffee, tea, etc. Okay. After a few years, they said, well, we need to up that rate a little bit. 3% isn't to ask too much. And of course, now where we're at, it's about 35%. And if you add in all the other taxes, look how much tax you pay on gasoline. A gallon of gas is mostly tax.
Yep.
And it's taxed every mile it goes down the road to get from the port through the refinery to the pump. Okay. You've got property taxes. You've got all kinds of taxes, sales taxes. When you get right on down to it, we're paying about 50%, 50 cents on the dollar tax.
I would say we're
So
probably
now,
paying more. I would say we're probably paying more if you think about even your tag on your car, the taxes on your insurance, the tag, your phone has a tax on it. I mean,
phone
it's
has
crazy.
tax. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
buy insurance, you're paying tax. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Okay. And so I don't mind if they start using these taxes, or rather these tariffs, and they're using their flexing muscles and going around. Trump appears to be using it as a bit of a carrot and stick ploy with his foreign policy. I wouldn't mind if we lower the taxes down. And how much should we be paying taxes? I would say, what does it say in the Bible? 10% to the king, 10% the temple tax, that's tithing, so that's really not the government, and 10% to the widows and orphans. So it's about 20% of your first harvest. Well, the average American makes 12 harvests a year. So yeah, I'd be all right with that. Let's do that. Okay. Yeah, well, I'm not going to hold my breath, but and they're not going to give up the tax system they've got because they can affect people's behavior on what they tax. It's too much of a tool for them. But already we're seeing some development. Now, China, they need us more than we need them. Every year, the president of China has to find jobs for 1 million more Chinese people.
Yeah.
Okay. And they make stuff for us to buy. And we can just say, look, we're not going to buy any more coffee makers, alarm clocks, or what have you. We're going to, move our stuff to Taiwan or to Korea or to Mexico or to Costa Rica, or we'll just make it in the States.
Yeah,
Mind
or what
you,
about we fix some of the ones that we already have? I mean, like we really don't need anything. Like we don't have to have a lot of what we're buying, because we have, we have gotten in a world where we're like, oh, I want a new coffee maker. I want a pink one instead of a green one, and back in the day, my grandparents, your parents would have probably painted something or fixed it or kept it
You
cleaner.
boiled water and you put it through
Yes.
that way.
Yes.
Or you had the
You did
percolator.
pour-overs. Hey, they were doing pour-overs before it was cool.
Yeah. Well, the United States has 340 million people. That's 340 million consumers. Yes, because children and babies, they consume too. They need their, kids' items. That's a huge market. And
Yep.
we can, leverage that to China to make them dance to our tune. They need us more than we need them.
Yes.
It's
In
a
your
bit of a
book,
dilemma. Yes.
I'm sorry, I think we're cutting out. I apologize. In your book, you actually talk a little bit about some of that in your book, the survival mindset.
Yes.
Can you tell a little bit about that?
What specifically are you referring to in
I
survival
don't know,
mindset?
just like in survival mindset, you had like several ways to get by with things and things that you would do if that you think people should be ready with and for.
Oh yeah, well, there's primitive living. My book, Survival Mindset, is about primitive skills, bushcraft skills, survival skills, but it's also about situational awareness and emergency planning. And yeah, you can simplify your life. I'm not suggesting we go back to some sort of pastoral lifestyle where we're all, trying to, carve civilization out of the wilderness like our ancestors did. That's a very hard life to follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what my great-grandparents did. My great-grandfather, he never borrowed anything. Everything was, he would never borrowed anything on land. It was all borrowed on the mules. The mules are actually listed on any deeds. Like, in other words, there's no mortgage. There was a loan for seeds and things like that
Right.
my great-grandfather might have needed. But if he didn't generate the crops, then he just basically didn't, they would just come and get the mules, because the mules were worth really more than the land at the time.
Yeah.
So, nobody was worried about taking your land, and so you never mortgaged your land. So therefore you never paid taxes on your land. There were no taxes even back then. There was nobody to come and collect taxes. I mean, it was all, everybody kept up their own land. We become very, we've become very just reliant upon the government. And the government, like in the case of Miami, we literally have politicians trying to give themselves more time in office, which is ridiculous. They are literally voting for themselves, trying to remove an election off the ballot, while we have a veteran for the first time ever running for office. And so obviously they seem to be extremely scared of Emilio Gonzalez, who is a colonel, who is probably right up there with, I know my grandfather and maybe possibly your dad. He's served with Army intelligence in the State Departments across the world, in Mexico and other countries. So he's very familiar, but it's very strange that we're relying upon like local governments to do basic things like, hey, mow the grass, in the middle of your island. Well, really, do they actually do that? No, they don't really show up to do it. Meanwhile, we're expected to pay property taxes, which part of your dollars are supposed to be going towards those basic services that you're really not getting. Like even the police that stake out in front of my house, they're paid for by the Russian development at the tune of over $100 an hour. And, that's not even coming out of taxpayer dollars. So, what are your taxes really going forward? Who are they going to? And why aren't we, why are they even having choices to clean this stuff up? And why are they trying to avoid elections when we actually have veterans that are running for office? To me, sounds like something that would happen in a third world country, right? Like politicians trying to remove an election. It's not constitutional. 2 courts have already ruled on it. And we literally have politicians from third world countries that were raised in third world countries that have moved here and have tried to take away elections.
No, that's very interesting what you just said, because today there was a Democratic congressperson, Democratic congresswoman who went down to Mexico, and she's originally, I believe, from Honduras or Costa Rica originally. She's a U.S. citizen now, and she said in Spanish in Mexico City that her loyalty is to her original country, not to the United States. I posted about that on Info Blurbs, and give me a moment, I'll find it. And
Mhm.
I got a problem with that. I got a big
Yeah.
problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm an immigrant. I
Yeah.
immigrated to the United States. I became a naturalized U.S. citizen after I joined the Army. And
Mhm.
in fact, I had to become a U.S. citizen in order to become a Green Beret to get a
I was going
security
to ask
clearance.
you, so exactly, how did your citizenship journey? I mean, considering you have a very unusual, so you and your family from Australia were in Thailand. Now, who did your father work for in Thailand?
My father was a mechanical engineer. He worked for a consulting firm, a U.S. consulting firm called Black & Veatch International. And he was working under contract for the Thai Electrical Generating Authority. And yeah, here we go. Democratic Congresswoman, Representative Delia Ramirez. She's from Illinois. She tells an audience while speaking in Spanish, "I'm proud Guatemalan before I'm American. When I took my oath of citizenship, part of the naturalization oath right up there is I renounce any loyalty to any foreign prince or potentate." So,
Mhm.
I don't even understand this dual citizenship business. That used to not be a thing. Um, yeah, there she is. And in any case,
Let's play this while you're talking about it, and
yeah,
then
I got a serious problem with this woman here has a loyalty thing. She should watch herself. I don't know if she's a naturalized U.S. citizen or she was born here. I think she was born here. But it seems to me that a naturalized U.S. citizen like myself can get their citizenship revoked for coming out
huh,
and saying something like that. Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Okay. Interesting.
so, I had to actually turn in my Australian passport. I had to cut it in half and turn it in to get my
Okay. So you
top
do not
secret
have
security clearance.
you do not have, you
No,
don't have dual.
I'm American all the way, USA, baby.
Okay, so how in the world are these people in Congress? How do they have like Israeli passports? How do they have passports to any other countries or any other allegiances? I've always wondered
I'm
this.
aware of two countries where a U.S. citizen can easily get a foreign passport. One is Israel. If you're Jewish, you just speak up, they'll give it to you. Okay, that's a passport. And that's not the same thing as being a dual citizen, but in another sense, it is. And the other one is Ireland. If you have a grandparent who is Irish, you speak up and you can get a Irish passport.
Wow.
Yeah, and of course, there's not some big oversight where they're concentrating on people and like, "Hey, you're not allowed to have this." I never understood this dual citizenship business. It seems to me it was not always this way, and then it emerged sometime in the '90s or something, and I'm dead set against it. I mean, particularly if you're part of the US government, you've gotta be USA all the way, and if you're not, that's some sort of foreign agent.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't
yeah.
understand how they distinguish between a foreign agent and an actual American. Let's see what she says here.
Quiero terminar diciendo unas palabras en español porque yo soy guatemalteca con mucho orgullo, primero que soy americana.
Yeah, she said,
Quiero
"I'm a
terminar diciendo
Guatemalan
unas
before I'm
palabras
an
en español
American."
porque yo
Primero.
soy
Yeah.
guatemalteca con mucho orgullo.
Wow. Unbelievable. But this is what's happening all over Miami. I mean, Miami, basically, Miami is about 80% Hispanic speaking. They try to
Yeah.
speak Spanish in the local government. I asked President Trump for a sign, and shortly after he released the statement, and actually the executive order naming English as the official language, and people
Very
in
important.
general. Yeah, it is very important. And even went on to explain why it was important, because you cannot get along. You can't know what's going on in your government. You can't know what's going on in America if you do not speak English. And it's very dangerous to like think that you can get by without speaking English or any other language when you're living in a different country. I mean, how many languages do you speak,
I
Pete?
speak 4 languages. and I enjoy speaking languages and learning languages. I actually speak almost 5. I speak French, Spanish, Thai, English, of course, and a little bit of Arabic. Enough
Wow.
Arabic to get by in a marketplace. And you know, I got no problem with people speaking a foreign language
Yeah.
in my presence around here in America. I think, that's the way I grew up overseas. We spoke English to each other in Thailand
Mhm.
as it's our native language. And then when necessary, we'd start speaking in Thai, of course. But in government, in official documents, in Australia, in Melbourne, Australia, in the phone book, there's like half of it is in 11 different languages, and that's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
That is wow.
Um, you can't do business. There's something called the Tower of Babel syndrome,
Yeah.
and that's why we should have a national language. And, they can call it English. I'd say call it American. There are more Americans speaking English than any other group in the world.
Yep.
So it used to be English, but now it's American, just like the Gulf of America.
Yep. Just like the Gulf of America.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great place for us to close, Pete. So tell everybody where they can find you and any closing words.
Well, I'm posting all day, every day on X on.
You just cut out for some reason. Strangely, you just cut out. I don't know what happened. We can't even hear you. So he's saying that you can post on X on Info Blurbs, and that's info_blurbs on X. And then on Facebook, it's a little bit different. It's info-blurbs on Facebook. So make sure that you follow Pete there. He has a lot of followers on X and a few on Facebook. He's just getting started on Facebook and Instagram. You want to try again, Pete? Yep, he's gone. Like, Pete, I didn't mute you or anything, man. Let's see. I'm going to try to mute you and bring you back in, but I can't hear you. I don't know if your mic cut out or what. We were having mic issues before. So, and it was me having the mic issues then. But I am super grateful to have Pete and his info blurbs and knowing exactly what any of our military men are thinking, or retired military men, because the other thing that I want to have Pete back on to talk about, that we talked about a little bit about the last time, is we talked about HARP and weather warfare. That's HAARP, and I'll link it in the description so that you guys can watch it, and also it'll come up as a suggested watch after this is live on YouTube. So if you haven't already, please make sure that you hit the like button, comment below. Make sure that you go and subscribe on patriotsperspective.com. Also go to infoblurbs.com, I believe is Info Blurbs. Let me actually pull up that to make sure that, because Pete does have his own site, which is great. So that way you can follow him there, and follow him on X at info-blurbs, and Twitter. So, and if you want Pete to come back on, if you want us to talk about a specific topic, or you want to know information that you may be interested in, make sure that you do comment and let us know what questions you have, so that I can try to answer those questions for you, or get Pete back on to answer them, because we'd be glad to have him back on, because he has great insights, and as do many of our people with national security clearances and who have served our country, especially now that we know the citizenship information. It's kind of awkward that Pete's mic just cut out after that citizenship information. It's like he's, oh, okay, here you're back, man. You're back. Okay, great.
Okay, it's working now. Yeah, how suspicious is that?
Yeah, I was like
The
thinking,
NSA is on.
They did not want you to talk about like your citizenship, and your views on citizenship. So yeah, Pete, I hope that you'll come back on. And I think I gave out your info blurbs information, but you want to close us out with some closing words?
Well, thanks again for having me on the show, of course. And yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm trying to make Info Blurbs into a significant media presence. I've got some unique sources, like I pointed out. I can actually say I've lived and worked on 6 continents: Asia, Australia, North America, Central and South America, Africa, too much, and Europe, both in Western Europe and in Eastern Europe, and of course, Asia, both in the Middle East and East Asia. And when I say I've lived and worked there, I mean between at least 6 weeks to 6 months, or over 6 years. Or in the case of Thailand, I was there for 10 years. Of course, I lived in Japan, in Okinawa for 4, and that's what I bring to the table.
And even though he's Aussie, he has no accent. He's all American. No dual passports here.
Oh, that's right. USA all the way. I mean, I love Australia. It's a beautiful country. But man, just look at the way they were treating their own people during the COVID time.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know,
no kidding.
And that's when people start saying, now we see what you're telling us about Australia, because they've got British-style socialism over there, and it's not good.
Yes, and I noticed that you have some information on that on Info Blurbs as well. So I highly recommend everybody go over, take a look, give them a follow. Man, you're building up your following over there fast. So
thank you.
Wish you much luck with that. We'll be paying close attention to it. And what
1 year anniversary in August.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. I like your little mic piece too. That's awesome. Thanks for coming on, Pete. You're awesome. Everybody, make sure you comment below, follow Pete. I'll have his links down below. And Pete, thanks again for coming on today.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, everybody, make sure you follow patriotsperspective.com. Remember to love your neighbor as yourself. God bless everybody.
Remember, take action. Take action. Don't let big tech win. Share this video with a friend now. Most importantly, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.